And our business. Ghana's post-election upswing now is looking so strong that the country is poised to take the lead as Africa's growing economy this year for the first time in at least 3 decades. According to forecasts from the World Bank, African Development Bank and the IMF, expansion in Ghana, West Africa's second biggest economy in 2018, should surpass that of recent champions Ethiopia and Cote d'Ivoire. Although Ghana's economy thrived for decades under relatively sound governance and a competitive business environment, it has suffered in recent years from the consequences of loose fiscal policy, high budget and current account deficit, and a depreciating currency. Heavy burdens of state regulations and political favoritism undermine overall competitiveness. In Publisher Africa Briefing, John Ofei-Ansah gives his insight on the Ghana economy. It's good to have you again, John. Many are skeptical of the economic miracle in Ghana. What makes this a compelling reform?
I wouldn't use the word compelling, but I would say it's impressive because Ghana had been in the economic doldrums for quite a long time. And since last year, it has crept out of the woods, if I could put it that way. Okay, the projections for GDP growth is high. It's about 7%. Okay, inflation has gone down from a record high of 19.2% in March 2016 to 11.8%, in December last year. When it comes to one of Ghana's major exports, oil, new oil fields have come on stream, and last year production was about 60 million barrels. Okay, but Ghana is not a one commodity economy. It is Africa's second largest producer of gold after South Africa, and the world's second largest producer of cocoa after Cote d'Ivoire. And luckily for Ghana, the prices for these two commodities, have risen. Okay, and again, the government, is showing some fiscal discipline. I mean, it's managed to the budget deficit is forecast to come down to about 4.5% from the previously projected 6.3%. All this, come together. I mean, with the inflation coming down, the budget deficit coming down, has afforded the central bank the opportunity to reduce its benchmark rate over the past year 5 times. Okay, so this has again made ample room for the commercial banks to provide more credit to the private sector. Okay, we all know that the private sector, starved of credit, is also starved of being productive. And then the private sector, as we all know, is the engine of economic growth. So I wouldn't say it's compelling, but it's impressive.
Right, John. Now, what is Ghana doing differently that Nigeria is not?
Okay, Nigeria's problem, if we compare the two, I mean, Nigeria, as we all know, relies on oil exports for over 90% of its exports revenue. That is the major difference between Ghana and Nigeria now. And don't forget, Nigeria's population is huge. I mean, between, I think, nearly 200 million. Ghana is close to 30 million. And again, Ghana does not rely on only one commodity as its source of foreign revenue. So therein lies the difference between Nigeria and Ghana. So for Nigeria to register impressive growth like Ghana is exhibiting, right, Nigeria needs to diversify its economic and revenue base. That is what Ghana is trying to do now.
All right, John. Now, why is the IMF still critical of fiscal discipline in Ghana?
Well, it is critical because the previous government, was very lax, in reining in government spending. There was large government borrowing, both internally and externally, right? And to spend on many huge, big-ticket infrastructure projects, right? So the government, so the IMF is telling the government, in fact, was it early this month, it told the government to increase its tax revenue, right, in order to qualify for the extension of the program Ghana has with the fund now. So that is the bigger criticism the IMF has about Ghana's economic performance.
Now, talking about Africa Free Trade Area, is Africa really ready to be the next continental trade bloc?
I believe Africa is ready. Look, right now, the intra-African trade stands about 15.3 or so %. Compare that to the EU and then the ASEAN countries in Asia. It's huge. I mean, intra-African trade is very minuscule compared to the EU and other blocs, okay? Now, Africa has current population is about 1.2 billion, okay? Our GDP, Africa's GDP is, I think, $2.something trillion, okay, across the 55 countries. There's a scope, okay, for Africa to increase, internal trade. I mean, what I mean internal trade, for the intra-African trade to increase, and it will help our small and medium-sized companies. It will help Africa's growth in general. So I believe Africa is ready now. And if it wasn't ready, then now I see that the political will is there to make this, a reality. I mean, right now, African leaders are meeting in Kigali to finalize, the protocols and other things to usher in this Africa Continental Free Trade Agreement. I believe Africa is ready. We need to trade more amongst ourselves. Africa is capable of that, and trading more amongst ourselves will help our economics, so our various economies grow, and therefore pull Africa out of poverty.
Indeed, John Ofei Ansah, many thanks for your thoughts on the Ghanaian economy and, of course, Africa in general.